Hi, everybody. My name is Yuanji Johnson, and I want to welcome you to Raising Your Children to Never Give Up Summit, where I've been interviewing 21 different experts on how to teach parents to encourage their children to persevere and to teach them the skills to be happy, confident, and successful. Now, there's a little bit of a twist to the interview today because we've usually been doing it by audio, but today we've got a special treat, and you're going to see a video interview with my special guest today. So I would like to welcome my guest today. Her name is Charlene Savloe, and she's a specialized natural therapist and also a mother. Therefore, she completely understands that sometimes parenting can be less than peaceful. And trust me, she's been helping me today. Many families have benefited from Charlene's coaching, and I'm excited that she is here today to bring a new flavor, a new twist to the interviews. So I'd like to welcome you, Charlene.
Thank you. Thank you for welcoming me. I'm so happy to be here.
Fantastic. So tell us a little bit about what natural therapy really is.
Well, here in Canada, when we say natural therapist, it's really talking about we work with the mind, body, and soul. So it's not just talk therapy. We really use different modules to really tap into the body aspect of mental health. And it's looking at my clients in a holistic perspective instead of just trying to put them in boxes and help them through whatever times that they need, whether it's parenting or family coaching or releasing trauma from their past. So it's a broad spectrum in a holistic perspective. So yeah.
So can you give us a little bit of an example of what you're talking about? Because that's specifically why we're doing a video, so that you can actually demonstrate what it is that you do and how it actually helps parents and children.
Yes. Well, the reason why and thank you so much for commenting, requested the video is because one of the modalities that I'm accredited and certified is emotional freedom techniques, or EFT, or a lot of people call it tapping. So basically, have you ever heard of acupuncture or acupressure?
Yeah.
Exactly. So we're taking that concept and bringing it into energy psychology, and we tap. It's called EFT, or again, emotional freedom technique, or tapping. We call it basically acupressure for the emotions, but instead of using the needles like acupuncture, we use our fingers, right, to tap on those specific energy points or meridian points to release the fight, flight, or freeze part that a lot of people can go into when they're in distress, when they're in talk therapy, when they're trying to deal with conflict. And a lot of us go into that on a daily routine, unfortunately, when we don't physically need to. So I just help my clients get out of that so, it can bring back some of that blood flow to the brain so we can make those logical decisions. So, yeah.
So how would that help me as a parent?
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing it helps is that if you practice tapping, because people use tapping in two different realms. So when you are, say your son won't go to bed, and you get frustrated and your anxiety goes up, or whatever discomfort goes up, or even if you have a headache, so physical stresses, you can tap down that distressing feeling that's going in your body right away. Calm down that nervous system. That's what you're going to be doing when you're tapping on those points. So as a parent, I always say, go ahead and calm yourself down. I always joke when I teach my seminar for parents with teenagers, I called it How to Raise Teenagers Without Raising Your Blood Pressure, right? Yeah. So a lot of us, our blood pressure would go up, our nervous system is acting up. So we need to bring that down in the moment so we logically can parent them and we don't overreact, because we all know when we overreact, it's not going to be helpful. So that's the first thing I would say to parents. But also to a lot of people will come and for sessions to release their past traumas and their past, the way they were raised and things that happened in their childhood that they're not okay with, so they don't pass that on to their children. So those are two ways to use EFT as a parent to help your children, but also you can teach these skills to them. So if they're in distress and a lot of kids don't like to talk about their emotions or don't know the wording, but we can still calm down that nervous system. And even, I know your child is younger, you can specifically tap on certain points or just put a little bit of pressure on certain points to help calm him down. Right, calm his nervous system down. So really, it's a broad, EFT or energy psychology. You can use it so many different ways as a parent.
Oh, that's brilliant. So, okay, so demonstrate on me. So how? Okay, so those of you that don't know, I have a son, and I love him to bits. But just before this interview, I got a bit stressed. So my friend here, Charlene, helped me out with a few of her techniques. So she's going to be helping me right now and demonstrating on how I can just calm myself down.
That's right. So maybe we should thank your son and thank the universe for allowing this to have happened, because now we can do a live demo, right? So this is called the basic recipe. And I believe that you'll be sending them the free gift, because this basic I'm giving a free gift that show this basic recipe again, so you don't have to memorize it here. So really, when you're doing it, to bring it down. So this is called our karate chop point.
Yeah.
So we do our setup statement on our karate chop point. And for some reason, energy psychology, we love things done in threes. So, you mentioned you were stressed out. So, and when you're with a practitioner or you're going on YouTube, you just repeat after the practitioner. So go ahead and repeat after me. So even though I'm a little bit stressed out, it was a tough bedtime routine. I'm open to the possibility. To release some of that stress now. Even though I love him to bits. I still can get stressed out as a mother. And I fully accept how I feel right now. Even though it was quite frustrating. Because I had things to do. I had an interview to get on. That's right. I'm open to releasing some of that stress now. And you would take a big breath in. And you go up to the eyebrow points. So when I say the eyebrow points, I always say to people, it's where your eyebrows should end, right?
All right, yeah.
Right here, yeah, and you just kind of tap along those points. So again, this is called the basic recipe. And then the next point is on the side of the eyes. So not on the temples, but the side.
Okay.
Big breath in. And I always say that when you're tapping, you keep your eyes open to let the energy flowing, unless you're with a practitioner and they're doing a special technique. And underneath the eyes, all this stress.
Released.
That's right. And what I love about tapping is that when we're tapping on underneath the nose, when we're tapping on the points, you focus on the stress. So all this stress, right? Because you're already stressed out. A lot of people don't understand why we focus on the chin point. We focus on the negatives, and then you repeat after me, all this stress.
All this stress.
Big breath in. Good. And then the collarbone points are right below your collarbone. Exactly. All this stress. So we focus on the negative because your body's already focused on the negative anyway. So we want to honor the negative because it's part of us, right? And the last point is underneath your arm. If you're a woman, it's where your bra line is. Yeah, exactly. That's right. So all this stress.
All this stress.
Big breath in. You seem a little bit less stressed. How do you feel?
Guys.
And obviously, if your stress level was through the roof, you would do that a lot, right? Yeah. But the fact is that when we're in the moment, we might not have time to do the basic routine, right? So what I say to people, my go-to, when you tap and you tap a lot, you start to go, okay, I kind of say this point speaks to me. Like my body really likes this point or this point. But one point that I always tell, especially I know you're a teacher, I tell teachers too, is that it's called the gamut point. So in between your pinky finger and your ring finger, it's like this bony part right here on your hand.
Yeah.
So that's something that you can do, and you can press on it like a heartbeat, or you can tap on it. That's a really good point to kind of calm down your nervous system again and bring down stress levels or anxiety or what have you. So that's one that, if you're rocking him and you can kind of even the side of your hands, again, there's a lot of meridian points there. Obviously, if you're holding him, you can't do this, but you can do this on your leg. So you're tapping, the side of your hand on your leg. So these are points that we go, okay, if I'm in public and I don't want to fully tap the whole recipe, then I can go to my gamut point and just press on it. I can go to the side of my hands, right, and just kind of. And, a lot of people who don't know emotional freedom techniques or tapping, they do things that they don't think is as tapping into those energy points. Like people will bite their nails.
Yeah.
And that's another one that, you and I talked about is the finger points. So it's just squeezing where your fingernail and your finger kind of meet, and you just squeeze those and breathe, right? And that's something, again, a lot of us will play with our fingers during meetings or during classes, and we don't know why, but this is very intentional to, again, send that message to the nervous system, and especially send the message to the amygdala, because the amygdala, for all the people out there that love science and research, there's a lot of research on energy psychology now, over 100 research studies, 5,000 articles posted. There's a lot of research that shows that when you go and take scans of the brain and someone's in fight, flight, or freeze mode, their amygdala lights up. Well, tapping on the meridians that we're doing, it shows that the amygdala quiets down. So there is research and that goes back to the mind and body connection, right?
Can you just elaborate or define what fight, flight, and freeze?
Some people call it fight, flight, or freeze. Some people call it fight, flight, or fold. A lot of people just say fight or flight. But when I work with clients, when there's a trauma, some people will fold or they'll freeze. So the way I break it down is, think about it back in the day that when a tiger chased us, right? When we lived out in the open, our body needed to go into fight, flight, or freeze. So if a tiger's chasing us, it has to instantly happen in our brain that we kick in, right? That whole amygdala part of the brain and the reaction part of the brain. And when you explain it to children, there's a great book that call it like the dinosaur part of the brain will kick in, that it's that animal instinct of, I got to run away to protect myself.
Yeah.
Or I got to fight to protect myself. Or, if is it a bear that you're supposed to freeze? If you see a bear and play dead, right, you got to freeze. So it's something that automatically happens. We do not have control over it. Happens in split seconds. And it's to save our lives. It's there to protect us. So it's there for a good thing. However, nowadays, our brain hasn't developed with all the technology we have. And we're going to fight, flight, or freeze mode way too often when we don't need to. And people can argue it's, because of chemicals in the air, in our food, but also technology. It's always the, ding, 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 hearing always being stimulated.
Yeah.
Whatever the reason is, again, it's important when we need it. However, when we don't need it, we need to get out of fight, flight, or freeze, because what happens on a body level is that 70-80% of your blood flow goes away from your frontal lobe. Okay, so that's where you make your logical decisions. And it goes into our arms in case we have to fight, goes into our legs in case we have to run.
Yeah.
It also takes blood and slows down the digestive tract. So people who are always constantly in that mode, even if they eat healthy, sometimes they're still not absorbing the nutrients of the food. Or they get really, they have a lot of digestive issues, stomach issues because of that, because it's not working right. And it's just the hormones go out of whack, and your cortisol level goes out of whack, and all these things that we don't want to happen when we don't need to, right? And as a parent, I'm sure there's times that we have strength that we don't understand that we have because this kicks in, right? That maternal or paternal instinct.
Yeah.
So that's in a nutshell what it is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So whatever situation we're in, we're either gonna fight and deal with it,
Yeah.
we're gonna freeze and like, I don't know what I'm doing, or we're gonna run away from the situation.
That's
And we
right.
naturally decide what we're gonna do in any circumstance or in the situation.
That's right.
So would you teach this fight, flight, and freeze to children? Because obviously I'm a teacher,
Mm-hmm.
but in education, you're going to have children or teenagers who come across a situation where it could be to do with their studies, it could be to do with their academics, it could be to do with bullying, it could be to do anything,
Mm-hmm.
when they feel a bit demotivated. So I would say demotivation is when they run from the situation, like when they give up.
Good. Yes, for sure. Yes.
Or
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
whereas perseverance would be to fight and to push through. Would you say?
Yes. Yes. If
In
you're
my analogy.
yeah, that's right. Yes. So yeah, if you're in fight, flight, or freeze mode, and we can get triggered by a test, taking a test.
Yeah.
We can get triggered by peer pressure.
Yeah.
So yes, if I procrastinate, I could possibly be freezing or not doing what needs to be done because I am in that mode.
Yeah.
For sure, that can be a possibility. So as a teacher, yes, I would highly recommend to teach that to children, because sometimes they go into kind of like that self-hatred of, oh, this happened and I should have done this, but this is what I did.
Yeah.
Well, if they can understand that your brain makes a split second in that moment to make that decision, well, then when you know that could be the possibility why you're handling it in that way, then you can get yourself out of that and go deal with it in a logical way.
Yeah.
So for sure, I would definitely teach, especially this generation with the rates of anxiety and depression. We need to give them as many tools as possible to handle and be, like you said, resilient and push through things, for sure.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So how could I use the technique that you just showed me with young people? Could I use that in the classroom? Because at the moment, I don't know if you have this. I think we discussed it before, but I don't know if you have this in Canada, where we have these little spinny things.
Yeah, the spinners. Yeah.
Spinners, and they use it as a form of distraction from if they've got ADHD or autism and stuff like that. But it's become a fashion trend here in the UK. Mm-hmm. So kids have it, whether they've got a special educational need or not. Mm-hmm. So as a teacher, that can be a little distracting. Mm-hmm. So how could I use the technique that you just showed me with young people, or introduce it to them as a teacher?
Yeah. Well, if you're not, if you haven't taken any training in EFT or, tapping, I would suggest that you would stick to the basics and just do things like the whole finger point. So it goes back to, and you can explain it in a very simplistic way. I kind of get sometimes too sciencey and researchy, because I know that some of your listeners really love that.
Yeah.
But really, when you explain it, it goes, you know what? Our body goes into this mode that is a good thing, but sometimes we need to get out of it very quickly. And I found a cool tool that helps with me. So if you lost your fidget toy or your spinner, you will hopefully always have your fingers with you.
Yeah.
So it's just teaching them to try it. Right. And yes, it looks silly. And yes, it's might feel weird at first, but try it. And the beautiful part is that if you're in a classroom of 25 people and you're doing some tapping, you can have borrowing benefits. So, if you start to kind of bring yourself down, then other people can start to bring themselves down, right? It's just saying, this is something that could be valuable to you. I want to try this every morning and see if it's something that we can do to start off our day to calm down our system.
Yeah.
And then you get feedback and see what they say. So,
So how can create, or how can parents create a resilient team? A team that, doesn't crumble under pressure? And we all do it as adults as well as children. But what can we do to encourage those young people to persevere and build their character so that it can set them up for the future?
The first thing is I always recommend for parents and professionals to listen and ask questions instead of always correcting them.
Mm-hmm.
So an example is, I never can do that. You know, they say, I can't do this. I'm going to fail. Why do I even bother? A lot of us want to go in and rescue them, and we want to correct. So everything they just said, no, you're not, you're not, you're going to do this. You can do right. And we go into either cheerlead mode, like, yay, rah, rah, you can do this, or correcting them. No, you're wrong. Remember when you persevered in this and blah, blah, right? And we start correct. Sometimes we just need to ask some questions and get curious to help them think, to help them self-regulate, to help them self-reflect. Because if I say to you, since we're talking about food, I don't like this word, but I'll use it. But if I say to you, hey, you know what, I think I'm stupid.
Yeah.
All you do is say, no, you're not.
Yeah.
And you're not. And here's the reasons why you're not. If I don't believe you, especially if you're my parent, if I don't believe you, then what you're saying to me is not entering into my brain, right? It's not hitting me. And sometimes when parents and professionals do that, the teen goes, if you only knew the true me, you might not approve or you might not love me, right? But if you say to me, help me understand, how come you think that way?
Yes.
And if you want to give your valued advice, because a lot of us have so much wisdom that we want to pass on to our children. But if I'm like the baby, I use this analogy, if I'm the baby bird mama and I'm shoving food down your throat, if you're not ready for it or you don't want it, you're just going to regurgitate it up, right? So it's asking the questions of, help me understand, how come you feel that way? What is telling you that is the truth? Is it completely true? Are there other truths that we're not looking at? Right? Because every time I ask someone a question, I'm giving them the opportunity to think. Right? And helping them understand that I'm listening to you, I hear you. What you might be saying is helping me to feel uncomfortable, but I'm dealing with my uncomfortableness and I'm focusing on you.
Yeah.
Right? Because as a parent, we don't like to see our kids uncomfortable. It's not fun.
No, it's not. It's not. And as a teacher, you don't like to see kids uncomfortable.
No.
I see it every day. So, for example, some of my students had to do a presentation. And everyone, you've got some kids that are confident. They're like, yeah, do our presentation, I'm great. And then you'll get the odd one or two who will freak out because they have to stand in front of the class. Yeah. So it's not like they've not done the presentation.
That's right.
But they're going to freak out.
Right.
So I had two, both girls. One spoke to me before the lesson and said that I can't do it because I'll get a panic attack and, I'm going to freak out. I'm not going to put her under pressure. So she was done. The other one, she came up, she stood in front of the class and she just burst into tears. And I could have said to her, go and sit down. Okay. However, I said, we can do this. So I stood by her, stood next to her, and I said, right, I'm going to read your presentation because it's still her work, but I read it for her while she's standing next to me. So I'm reading her presentation, and I'm saying it's really good, and the whole class is watching. And then we get to the end, and I said, right, this is all your work. I want you to finish it. However, I want the rest of the class to motivate you and to praise you and to encourage you to do it. So the rest of the class were encouraging her and speaking words of affirmation into her so that she feels that she is able to do it and not a failure. Because you do get some kids that will laugh at you and say that you can't do it.
That's right.
So it was all affirming her. And then she said she'd done the last slide and finished off the presentation. Smile on her face of achievement. Even though she'd done one slide out of the whole presentation, she was able and accomplished to do that in front of the whole class.
That's right.
So, when she didn't have to say the words, I feel stupid or I'm stupid. But when she stood there, she felt, inadequate. She felt she's not good enough to stand in front of the class.
Right.
But it is very important using words of affirmation, finding out why they feel the way they feel, instead of you telling them all the time, no, you're not. But to them, yeah, I do feel stupid, but you're not listening to me. You're telling me I'm not, but I do feel that way.
Right.
So
That's
yeah,
right.
just listen.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, it sounds like you handled that situation beautifully, right?
I
It's yeah, it sounds that way, and the fact is that I guess in the perfect world, before we would even have them present, right? We would be proactive, and we would have an open dialogue,
Yeah.
and talk about how public speaking is, what, isn't it like the second fear or the first fear in everybody's life? Like, it's so, and validate what they're feeling is normal. I use that word normal, and I always put those quotes because really, what is normal? But
Yeah.
millions and millions of people have that fear. So it's validating it, and then exploring, okay, how are we going to help you through this? Like you did with her.
Yeah.
Okay, this isn't working for you. So you tried this, and then she was able to do it. And that could have been very inspiring for the individual that said she would have panic attacks if she did.
Yeah.
Right? I see that someone else struggled. I see that, the teacher, you helped her through it, and I saw the proudness on her face. So that could have been an aha moment for other students too. So you never know. And that's the thing, right? As a teacher, you don't know what seeds are going to grow.
Well, the funny thing is, the child that said, I'm going to have a panic attack, I can't do it, at the end of the lesson, she stayed behind and said, oh, Miss, can I speak to you? And I said, yeah, of course you can. And she goes, would I be able to do my presentation next week? Because I think that I can do it now.
That's right.
And I was like, of course you can.
Awesome. See, then that's another affirmation that you handle it beautifully, right? It is the whole validation of what you're feeling is normal. It's okay to be afraid, but push through it. And other people get it. Right?
And I just want to say, like, as parents, we were children too. And sometimes we need to use our life experiences and our stories to be able to relate to these children. So I think a lot of the times when we become adults, it's like we forget that we were kids.
That's right.
And we try to, solve the problem. So, I remember a time when I was in that situation where I used to read with my mum, and I would get to a point when we were reading, she would tell me how to say a word, so I couldn't spell this word or couldn't read this word, and she'd tell me what the word was, and we'd come round to that word again, I'd forget that word, and she would tell me, and then probably happened about 2 or 3 times, to the point where she got frustrated with me and was like, okay, I can't be bothered to do this anymore. Don't get me wrong, me and my mum are very close, but there's always certain things that you will remember that could create your mindset to become a little bit, to bring in fear about reading publicly, because obviously I was reading to her. And then it got to a point where I would have to stand up in front of a class and read, and it felt like the words are moving on the page, and my heart would start being, so I wish I had all this.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Felt like the words are on the page, and I would start to sweat. And reading in front of public, reading in front of public audience, was terrifying for me, all because of I felt like a failure because if I couldn't read a word. And I do believe, because of that experience and those experiences, and me having been able to overcome that, because obviously I'm a teacher, I have to speak in front of kids every day. I have to do assemblies all the time, so I have to speak in front of public and parents. But being able to overcome that has enabled me to use my story to help young people. So I just want to say to the listeners, or to the viewers and to the parents, sometimes we need to backtrack and think about how we felt, and not always try to solve the problem, but try to empathize about how we overcame these certain situations to be able to help our children, and just to take a step back and not delve in.
That's right.
And sometimes we're actually still dealing with that problem. We could still be dealing with it now as adults.
Definitely.
So we can take the journey with our kids together at the same time.
That is such an important point, because what you did with the student in your example is what parents can do. Instead of jumping in and rescuing, you stood by her. You were there, as a support. You did, yes, read it for her, but then she was able to do it herself. But the fact is that if we always are the rescuer, if we always are the fixer as the parent or the adult, then we are taking away that opportunity for them to figure out how to get out of it. And sometimes when someone's in quicksand, they just don't know how to get out of it, right? But there's other times, and all we have to do is stay and be present and go, okay, I'm just going to stay here. I'm going to allow them to vent. I'm going to allow them to talk out loud, especially if your child is a talk to thinker.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, that's how I process. I need to talk things out in order to process it through my brain. So if they're a talk to thinker, and they just want you to listen, but all you want to do is rescue and I call it unsolicited advice, right? It's advice that they're not asking, but you keep on pushing them.
Yeah.
That will turn off teenagers and kids very quickly, right? And they just won't listen. It's kind of like that whole thing that they look at you, and then a parent can choose to get frustrated because they're looking at you and you know all they're hearing is wah, 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 like this. Right? So, but it's just to listen, ask questions, validate, and be present. That's huge. And nowadays with our fast-paced world, sometimes we do forget that, right? So it's just to be very mindful of that. So yes, for sure.
Yeah, and patience is the key. Patience is definitely the key. Yes, we do live in a fast-paced world, and we get a little bit impatient because we're always rushing to do things.
That's right.
But we need to be patient. Just take a step back, breathe.
That's right.
It's actually therapeutic.
It is. It is, for sure. Because, it's remembering that, I was somewhere and the gentleman said, and don't quote me on this because I didn't do the math. For some reason, my brain always goes back to, it's like 953 weeks or something scary of how it is when your child is born until they're 18.
Oh.
There's such a short amount of time. Now that doesn't sound like the right math. Anyways, y'all can do the math. But the whole point is that it's such a short time. And if we fast forward through it, well, then you hear those people who are in their, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s going, I really wish I would have took more time with my kid.
Yeah.
Right? And yeah, sure, tonight was hard to put him down, but I'm going to go in and look at him as he's peacefully sleeping and then creep out of the room very quietly.
Yeah.
Right? But it's just going, okay, my teenage daughter that is having troubles reading, for your example, or having troubles with her boyfriend, which I think is just so, a lot of parents forget, wherever your child is at, whether they're young or a teenager, it's the most important and dramatic thing in their life right now. And as an adult, we have so many other things to juggle, right? Sometimes we have aging parents, we have mortgage to pay, we have, all these other things. And we forget that them not being asked to the prom is like someone taking away their house.
Yeah.
And then as a parent, we're like, are you kidding me? I don't know how I'm going to pay the mortgage. You're complaining about this. We forget that, on a scale of 1 to 10, some of their problems are a 10 for them where they are. And like you said, remember when you were a teen, it was a 10 for us.
Yeah.
Or a child.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's stepping back going, okay, even though this issue is not going to cause them to be homeless or whatever extreme example you have going on in your life, it's still huge for them. So let me validate it, be patient, and go back to what you said, breathe. Yeah.
Well, Charlene, I just want you to give one vital tip before we leave that you can give our listeners or viewers. And I do know you're going to give everyone a free gift, so that's fantastic. So everyone that's watching, you get a free opportunity to use all these techniques for free. But what else could you leave our viewers? I keep saying listeners, I'm sorry guys, our viewers today, help with their children and raising resilient teens or children?
The first tip that comes to me is going back to being the detective. Instead of being the corrector or always the advice giver, is be the detective. Help me understand and insert whatever it is there. Help me understand why you melt the G.I. Joe in the toaster. Help me understand why you thought it was a good idea to get drunk tonight. Help me understand why you're procrastinating. Whatever your child is going through, and if they're younger, use smaller ages, right? But help me understand And then if you have a teenager, they're like, you just don't get me, whatever, then you go, you're right. I don't get your perspective or the way you're looking at this. So please help me.
Yeah.
Your way.
Yeah.
So the detective in you, writing down detective questions on the situation wherever your child is, and knowing that sometimes they don't know. And sometimes they are in fight, flight, or freeze. So you can give them techniques to bring, the blood flow back to the brain, holding it like this, right? Or the tapping. But really become a detective and be curious. Because when we're curious, we're more tuned in. But when you stand in judgment or the advice giver and you stand on that pedestal, we're not hearing the advice that would be helpful, or we're not hearing the questions that we need to ask to help guide them to be resilient. And be a professional choice maker, as I call it, right? So I guess that would be my one tip. I love my long-winded one tip. That would be it.
No, but it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It is detective. Find out. You're thinking of your children, but you are a detective because they have their own personality, their own characteristics. They're learning life the way you're learning life. So get to know them. Get to know them.
That's right. It's all about connection. We all want to feel loved, heard, and validated, period.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Well, Charlene, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's always a pleasure talking to you. I just want to say a big thank you for joining us today.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Thank you for having me.
No, it's no problem. And guys, check out her website. Can you just give us your website again?
Sure. I have two websites. It's www.peacefulfamilies.ca or www.peacewithinme.ca because I'm in Canada.
Yay. And yes, we do need some peace within us. And I think, guys, you need to check her out because she's fabulous and start doing our tapping.
That's right. Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, honey. Take care.
You too.
All right.